Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson is a high fantasy novel written in 1999 and is book one of Malazan Book of the Fallen. It follows the conflicts and struggles of a multi-continental war where deception and deceit run rampant, and where gods, mages, demons, and creatures of the night are all vying for glory and a piece of the prize. So I first came across this series when looking up new series to get involved in. I'd been itching to get invested into a long series and really sink my teeth into a new fantasy world. It wasn't long before I came across Malazan, but it didn't exactly leap off the shelves. Everyone within a country mile who had read the book proclaimed that it was the hardest fantasy series out there. A lot of the complaints I saw were from people who had just read that first book and dipped. With the series being 10 books long, with numerous spin-offs, each book being well over 800 pages, I can't blame them. Seeing all the complaints about Erikson's writing style and how this was an awful way to begin a series, it really put it on the back burner for me. But I finally picked up Gardens of the Moon, and what did I think? Oh my god, I never knew I needed this book so much until now. If this is the worst the series gets, then sign me up. Simply put, I loved the heck out of this book. And surprisingly, it was for all the reasons that people said I would hate it. I'll start with the world building and the introduction to this series, since that's what people seem to complain about the most. I can fully understand why people were annoyed with this book. Throwing you into the deep end does not begin to explain the depths to which Erikson brings the readers within the first few chapters. We go from an empire facing revolt to a time jump to the empire having been overthrown to a girl being possessed and another time jump, all within the span of a couple chapters. All the while, names like Shadowthorn, Untakan, Genabacchus, Warrens, Claws are all being thrown at you without a moment to catch your breath. Not unlike Dune, there's a lot of world building that the author is expecting the reader to pick up on. And so that's where I think a lot of people were approaching this book in the wrong way. As soon as I realized that Erikson wasn't going to spoon feed me any answers, I took a more laid back approach to the hailstorm of information. While still intently reading, if something wasn't explained to me right away, I sort of disregarded it and sort of filed it away for later, trusting that if it was truly important, Erikson would take the time to explain it. And like clockwork, it happened every time. Whenever I felt like I was about to be completely lost and overwhelmed with all this information, Erikson would come along and explain concepts and world building that happened earlier on. And thankfully, not through the exposition dumps that plague a lot of bad writing, but through actual dialogue. Hallelujah. Someone who's a master of the show, don't tell style of writing. Now, even though I said I took a more laid-back approach, that was in terms of not expecting things to be explained to me right away. You still have to intently read. While you might be able to skim read a few paragraphs here and there where characters are going on about long histories and using words that you have no hope of pronouncing correctly, you can't be a passive reader for long. You need to remember events and details that happened earlier on and keep everything sort of straight in your head. This is where my Kobo edition came in handy. I could look up when I'd heard something last and the context in which it was said. I can appreciate that Erikson really trusts his readers to stay afloat. I think if you're already someone who likes to read, you have the patience and reading comprehension above someone who doesn't. Erikson really makes you flex those reading muscles and put in work along the way. The best part is, this is work that you'll want to put in, because god damn is this book interesting as heck. There were multiple times when I had to put this book down for a second and just say to myself, wow. The story structure is like those acrobats balancing spinning plates on sticks. You cannot believe they keep adding plates to the spinning, and you're just in awe of their talent. Just when you think Erikson has added enough characters and plot lines, in comes a wholly new aspect of the world out of left field. And you sort of wince, wondering if Erikson can pull it off. And miraculously, he does. There are some tremendous wobbles and close calls, but he makes it work. The politics of this world are very complex. Different factions vying for power and willing to stab their friends in the back, all while smiling to their faces. What makes the politics so interesting is that there is a great history in this world. I find a lot of the time with fantasy novels, events in their past are interesting, but never as interesting as the events being told by the author. Now, this makes sense. Authors want to write about a time in their world that they find most interesting and are just filling in the details as they go along. But Erikson has created such a rich world where the past is even more interesting than what's going on. Erikson is a trained archaeologist and anthropologist, and it shows. He really knows what makes a civilization tick and how histories and stories are told throughout the ages. This is a world where myths and legends reign supreme. A character's legacy and reputation precede them everywhere they go. And since the history isn't delved into too deeply, but just through passing conversations, my imagination ran wild with what could have happened to make them so iconic. These characters pop off the page as fully fleshed out people. Erikson introduces us to characters with long pasts and lives fully lived before we even meet them. I think this is one of the brilliant aspects of the book. Erikson knows that just like in real life, people and characters don't just fall from the sky as fully developed people. They have lives before we're introduced to them, and they will continue to have lives and stories after the reader is done with them. By showing some of the characters after they've completed what would normally be a fantasy character arc, we're able to see further advancement and development of the character. It's a testament to Erikson's writing ability that makes the reader care for his characters after just a short introduction. I was willing to run through a brick wall for Whiskey Jack. Anomander Rake was a badass, but you could tell he was harboring a lot of pain. Perrin was the boy who got everything he ever wished for and worked hard to get it, only to realize that he didn't want that life. These are characters and plot lines that can only be explored in this way. Stereotypes and tropes are subverted and toyed with, as the time jumps allow Erikson to play with the true essence of what makes each character tick. By introducing the characters to us in this way, Erikson is able to dive deeper into themes that really spoke to me. Finding one's purpose and taking ownership of one's actions is a constant theme. Characters have to live with the knowledge that they are just as culpable in the atrocities committed as the influences causing them. Yes, in this world, gods and monsters have tangible effects and can manipulate and scheme with humans. But the humans in this world are just as capable of deciding when to do things without the influence of the gods. Sometimes these are unspeakable actions, and they must live with the knowledge that they did them out of their own free will and that there is no one else to blame. Now, Erikson's style of writing isn't flawless. Due to his penchant for introducing large, often world-breaking aspects without any introduction, it can come across sort of as a Deus Ex moment. There is something so out of left field that comes in at the end of the book to resolve the conflict that it left my head spinning. I had honestly thought that I had missed something earlier on. Granted, I may have missed it, considering just how dense this first entry is, but moments like that took me out of the book a tiny bit. Now, I won't harp on that too much since that's exactly what I'd been praising earlier, but it can definitely be a double-edged sword. I, without a doubt, want to dive deeper into this world. While I think I understood the magic systems and the history of the world, I really want to dive deeper into the fandom wikis and do some deep lore explorations. However, I think I'll hold back on that for now. I like reading things in order and pay great attention to publication order. Publication order is king. Those stupid BuzzFeed or IGN articles stating the correct way to read a series isn't what I'm trying to do here. If things were meant to be read a certain way or uncovered later on in another book, I don't want to spoil that for myself just by reading a wiki. If you read all of the Malazan books and are just here to watch someone rave about your favorite series, let me know if that's a good strategy. Otherwise, I'm sticking to it. All in all, I adored this first entry into the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. I currently have book 2 on my shelf, and I'll be diving into that fairly soon. This book gets a very high recommendation from me. If you liked this review, please consider subscribing and following me along this journey into the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Until next time, and as always, stay reading. Peace.